Hello and welcome to the Passion Driven Pioneers interview series. I'm your host, John Channon, and today I'm joined by Jason Suss, who is the owner of A Proper Pour. Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks, John.
Yeah, would you like to kick us off with a brief background as to who you are, what you do, and then the business that you're in?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. So I was a corporate tech guy. I worked for a big software company. Moved to Minneapolis, where I live now, about 18 years ago. Got a job with a big software company, and then let's see, it was probably 2012 or so. I went to a local restaurant and I had a really good bourbon old fashioned. And I was never much of a drinker. I'm still not, which surprises people, which will make more sense when you find out more about what I do. But I thought, oh, this is cool. Like, I like this whole cool crafted cocktail scene and bartending, seems fun. And so I started getting into bartending while working at the software company. And then slowly the bartending company grew and it became legitimate in 2013, officially launched A Proper Pour. And so I own a private bartending company or mobile bartending. I'll go to someone's house, set up a bar, I'll make fancy drinks. I do cocktail classes. I do whiskey tastings. You can tell I like whiskey. Really anything kind of around beverage. Think what you would use a caterer for, but for drinks. And so, I kind of made that transition from software corporate, full time into owning my own company over the course of about 11 years. And for the past four, I have done only A Proper Pour. But for the previous seven to that, I did both.
What was that trigger that led you to go to this 100% of the time from just kind of doing it on the side a little bit?
So it was growing. In 2019, I had done about 100 events that year. So I was doing
Wow.
an average of, about two events a week. And that's typically nights and weekends, right? Because I was working my full-time job, Monday through Friday. And then a couple things happened. The company I worked for did an IPO and went public, which was a good thing. And then, so March 1st of 2020, I decided that the bartending company had grown to the point where it was a sustainable thing that I could do. My wife had a good full-time corporate job, and so we had healthcare there because we know healthcare is typically tied to employment. You want to be careful with that. And so I said, I think I'm ready to do this. So March 1st, 2020, I put in my notice at the big software company and said, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna go do this bartending thing. And then March 15th, 2020, all of my events got canceled because, as you know, right, we entered the COVID era and we weren't doing in-person events. So that was a little bit of I think the word for that year was pivot, right? Everybody had to pivot. And so I pivoted into virtual experiences and I linked up with a couple different companies that were providing virtual experiences. And I ended up being busier than I thought I would be doing virtual cocktail classes for a lot of the tech companies that I used to work with. I would do a virtual class where I would work their corporate pitch and corporate information into the cocktail class. There's a lot of, fortunately, overlapping vocabulary between the world of cocktails and spirits and technology. Even if you talk about proof, right? The percentage of alcohol, and doing a proof of concept, right? And how both of them were originally based on meeting objective criteria. So really silly, techie dad jokes, things like that. But it ended up, I did about 200 virtual classes that year and to the next year. And that helped me go full time into A Proper Pour, and now it's all that I do.
Wow. That's kind of a neat story because when you said March 1st, 2020, I knew exactly what was happening next.
Yep, I didn't. Nobody did, but it ended up working out, thankfully.
So, talk to us about maybe the difference between doing this part-time and then doing this full-time.
Sure.
What were some of those things that you had to make sure you had in place to make sure that this thing was successful? Obviously, pivot the first year, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the biggest thing for this whole journey was that I had the luxury of having a good full time job as I grew this business. If I had just said I'm going to go off and start this with nothing else going on, it would have been really difficult because it takes time to grow. And I think, growing from small to medium sometimes is harder than growing from medium to big. because there's more things that have to happen. And once you get to medium, right, then you just kind of grow everything that's in medium. But when you're going from small and trying to get to medium, there's a lot of different things that come into play because you don't really have any help. You don't have anybody else. It's just me. Right? I'm doing this. So having that full-time job for the first 7 years of growing this company means that the first year, I did 15 events, right? And the second year, I might have done 30. And the third year, I might have done 45, right? And then I got to the seventh year and we were getting up to about 100. So that's, 2 events a week, which, you can't sustain working 2 days a week, but it's 2 events a week, which means 4 or 5 days of work for those 2 events to happen. So having the luxury of having that job for the first 7 years was I had a paycheck, I had insurance and everything going on, and I could part-time do the nighttime events, the weekend events, which is primarily when bartending things happen. So it worked out all right. So then when I was ready to transition to full-time, I had gotten to the point where I was doing at least 2 events a week. Again, I had the luxury of having had that corporate job for all these years, which provided me with a cushion. My wife had a full-time corporate job, so we were stable with that. We do not have kids, so a lot of people are trying to do this and they have 2 or 3 kids at home. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, and so I just didn't have that responsibility, which gave me my nights and my weekends totally free to do these things. So all those things I think helped me get to the point of working both jobs to transitioning to just this full time. But I again had the luxury of a kind of a slow growth to be able to do that, which helped.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how you're staying innovative in your space. What are some of the things that you do to remain innovative in your space? Because as you said, cocktails have been along for a long time.
Yeah, it's a very steady industry. I think the joke is, it's kind of everything proof. If people are sad, they drink. If they're happy, they drink. There's not much going on. Might as well drink. And but there are some changes, right? There has been a shift away from alcohol I've seen in the last couple of years. I think a lot of people went pretty hard during COVID. They were home, they were lonely, whatever. Sales of alcohol at liquor stores, their baseline raised about 30%, the average liquor store. Because again, I go to a lot of liquor stores, I talk to a lot of people, and their pre-holiday Christmas sales became the new baseline for the full year. So there was a lot of drinking, and I think a lot of people maybe were just ready to back off a little. Here in Minneapolis, and a lot of places around the country, there's also a shift towards THC as opposed to alcohol as kind of an alternative for something to, have a THC drink and then go to the party as opposed to going to the party and drinking all night. So those two trends I'm seeing a little bit less alcohol. So I'm being asked a lot more for non-alcoholic cocktails that are just as fun and visually appealing and interesting as regular cocktails. People want something more than just sparkling water with a lime, right? They want something that's in a fancy martini glass or coupe glass with a fancy garnish and a fun color and some sort of other thing that makes them feel like they're part of the group that is drinking. Because and I always joke that alcohol is the only drug you have to justify not doing, even in a work setting. You'll get pressure to drink. Oh, John, have a beer. Come on, we're at happy hour. It's a group of us. Have a beer. Have a beer. And you don't need an excuse to not drink, right? And I mean, a lot of people don't drink for a lot of reasons, whether it's allergies or religious beliefs or they don't drink anymore or whatever. You don't need a reason to not drink, but there is a lot of pressure. So non-alcoholic is a big thing, doing a lot more mocktails. The market is being flooded with non-alcoholic wines that are good, right? It used to just be, there was one and it wasn't great. Non-alcoholic beer, every local brewery has a non-alcoholic option. There's a number of different brands that have come out on the market in the last year or two that are really good tasting beer without the alcohol. Non-alcoholic spirits have a little way to go, but the wine and beer has come a long way. So keeping up to date with that, making sure that there's something for everyone at the party. I'm also doing a lot more classes. People are interested in experiences, so I also do cocktail classes, right? How to make restaurant or fancy, cocktail bar quality cocktails at home. So I'll go to someone's house, we'll set up, 12 stations like this, and everybody will have the tools, and I'll walk them through, here's how to make a fancy cocktail, whether it's this style or that style. Guided whiskey tastings are always popular, for a group. Like, okay, here's 5 totally different whiskeys. Let's taste them all. Let's talk about them. Let's teach you how to smell whiskey, which sounds silly, but there's a way to do it that's better. Where are they from? How are they different? How are they made? Those are always interesting. Those work virtually. They work in person. The virtual cocktail classes, like I said, were popular. I'm now actually right on the cusp of a big change. I just leased a new space that I'm sitting in right now. It's not done yet. There's a lot of remodeling that has to happen. But that's going to be a space where I'm going to do cocktail classes. And I also want to do a kind of an idea my wife and I have been toying with is a bartending school for people who don't want to be bartenders, but have always wanted to bartend. So think of it more as like the bartender experience. So I'm going to have a proper bar built out here, and we're going to offer a bartending school, maybe for people that are a little older. They're not looking to get a job at a restaurant, but they want to bartend. So we'll do a couple of classes. We'll teach them the fundamentals, help them, work out a menu of their own that they want to make and serve, and then they can use the space, invite some friends, serve their menu, come in, we'll have everything ready, be the bartender, right? Be the person that's behind the bar and chatting with the guests and making the drinks and doing the whole thing. And then go home. We'll clean up. So you get the best part of the bartending, right? No setup, no prep, no cleanup, none of that. You just get to make the drinks and be the bartender and have your friends there in a private space. So I think that'll be fun, kind of a bartender experience thing for people to do. So that's on the horizon of something I'm planning on putting together here. So
Well,
those are the things that's on the horizon.
yeah, I was going to ask you about your future plans and goals that you have for your business. So you're in the process of opening this space now,
Mhm.
but how do you see your business evolving over the course of the next 5 years?
Sure. So having the space now, I had another space previously for a year that was fine. This one I just moved into is a lot more conducive to what I want to do. I was pretty limited in kind of it was just me because all my stuff was at my house. So if I was going to do a party, I'd pack up all the glassware and put it in the car and I'd make all the stuff and so it really was kind of just me. Now that I have this space where I have an area where prep can be done, an area where all the dishes and glassware can be washed, an area where everything can be stored and labeled, I can have other bartenders come here, take what they need, do the party, come back. So it gives me a good place for that growth to happen because I can only be in one place at once.
Yeah.
But with multiple bartenders in a setup like this, they can come here, take what they need, go do a party, come back, drop things off, and I can be somewhere else. So that's going to help me scale and grow to do more than one event on a specific day. And then being able to host events in here allows me to offer new experiences, new offerings that I didn't have a place I could really do that otherwise. So that's the plan for the next few years is build the space up, host events here, events that make sense. Um, be able to do multiple events on a certain day. Because me, I'm getting old, and those 6 p.m. to midnight, 150 person big parties they're a lot. They're a lot of work. It's a lot of lifting. It's a lot of bringing stuff back and forth, right? I have to bring everything there. I have to set everything up. I have to bring everything back. It's a lot of lifting and carrying. And I can't do that forever. So to be able to have, a team of other bartenders to kind of break that out will be nice.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, I think that allows you to scale your business without you having to scale yourself,
Right.
or you
And
are
it's nice
scaling
because
yourself in a unique way.
yeah, I get, good quality, trusted bartenders that I've worked with. A lot of them are people that used to bartend and maybe now have a corporate job. So they're available on weekends where the other bartenders that are still working in a bar typically aren't. And then the bartenders that are still working, restaurants and cocktail bars typically aren't available on weekends, but I can use them on weekdays for corporate events and things like that. So it's a good mix to have that. And, I can't be everywhere. And I don't like saying no to my clients that reach out and say, hey, can you come to a party? And it's like, no, I'm already committed. I feel bad. But I can have, this group of trusted bartenders and, have one of them be able to do the party and, kind of give the same experience, the same offering.
Yeah, because they're now your brand, which is cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you've got a place to train them and develop them into your
Mhm.
brand, right?
Yep. And
That's
that's
great.
something that another thing I'm consulting with a couple of restaurants on their bar program and doing a little training of their staff. That's something I could do here, where almost like a bartender training program. Like, hey, you have some new bartenders, send them here. We'll walk them through the fundamentals, the basics. Teach them about the spirits, about beer, about wine, about any of those things, so that when they come into your establishment, you know that they know, right, this baseline of knowledge. They understand the classic cocktails, they understand the ingredients, they understand the fundamental ratios of drinks, and hit the ground running. Like that's a service that could be offered as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good service that would be offered. Knowing that this show is kind of targeted towards people who are going to be in their first few years of business, do you have any final thoughts or words of advice you'd like to share with our audience today?
It's hard. It's a lot. I got a piece of advice years and years ago from one of my dad's good friends, and he said, Jace, he's like, look, always play with a better golfer, right? So basically, never miss an opportunity to be with someone who knows more than you do or is better at something you do. So if you're looking to do something, look around. Who can help you. I was able to do this with a lot of help from other people. I partnered up with a couple private chefs, and they brought me in to the gigs that they had, and they already had a great client list. So that was a great way to get in with people and be seen, and do a good job, and become their trusted vendor for beverage. So find, your friends, your peers, your coworkers that maybe can help you. Lean on them, right? I mean, you use those resources. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I asked a lot of people for help with things, and it takes time, right? And it takes effort, and you kind of have to do everything. If you start a business, you're the chief everything officer, right? That's the E when you're starting your own business. You're the chief everything officer. You're going to be doing the finances. You're going to be doing the shopping. You're going to be doing the remodeling or the building stuff. You're going to be, taking out the garbage, and everything, right? Until it builds up. So be ready for that, right? And it's time. So make sure you have the time that you can devote to that, and you know don't ignore everything else, right? I mean, don't let it overtake you and become you. And you still have family, you still have friends. Be careful that it doesn't consume you, because sometimes I see people starting businesses, and it's early mornings, late nights, and the rest of their life struggles. So, right, try to maintain that balance, which is easier said than done.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today, Jason.
Yeah, my pleasure. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it was great meeting you, learning more about your entrepreneurial journey. And to everyone watching, I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.